Hello, everyone. Delia and I are so excited to have everyone here. And I'm sure you were in the keynote. So this is just an extension of that. You know, what a great message. Stand by your power. I'm gonna actually tattoo that on myself. Stand by your power, because those are the words we need today. Delia, you want to say a few words to everyone?
Yes, Socorro, you jumped right in, but I want to welcome everybody. Buenos dias. I echo what she said. That keynote was amazing. Before Socorro gets started, I want to introduce her to everyone who does not know of this wonderful person. Before I do that, though, I need to share my first connection with Dr. Socorro Guadalupe Herrera. Yeah, I said her full name. I met her through a textbook, actually, in 2006. I saw her name written across a methods book, and at that time, there was some ESL training going on at a building I was working at, and 6 years later, I was able to see the growth in her program, and she was going straight BDI, which I'll talk about in her intro. But it was an amazing inspiration to see her share her experiences and how she grew to where she was at as the director at SEMA. So Dr. Socorro Herrera is a professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the College of Education and is the executive director of the Center for Intercultural and Multilingual Advocacy at Kansas State University. Her K-12 teaching experience includes an emphasis on literacy development. Her research focuses on literacy opportunities with cultural and linguistically diverse students, reading strategies, and teacher preparation for diversity in the classroom. Dr. Herrera is a nationally recognized expert on biography-driven instruction for CLD and other EL students. She conducts multi-state and international professional development on issues related to teacher preparation for pre-service teachers, BDI, and classroom accommodations for CLD students. Her recent research emphasizes BDI and globalization in education. She is the author of 9 textbooks and has been widely published in the TESOL Journal, Bilingual Research Journal, Reading and Writing Quarterly, as well as the Journal of Teacher Education and Practice. Today's outcome, participants will examine the role we each play as agents of change. Actually, she's going to share that one. I don't have the updated outcome. My apologies. Welcome, Dr. Herrera.
Bueno, buenos dias. I'm hoping some of you are in a warm place here in Kansas. We're kind of like freezing. And so I'm going to get right started. Nada más porque no tenemos mucho tiempo. And we love to tell stories, and I'm one of those that loves to tell stories. So I am going to share my screen, and then I'm going to disappear. I won't see myself. I encourage you to ask questions. This is a conversation. This isn't to sit and get. What resonates with you, what raises questions, what makes you angry, what makes you do a happy dance. I'm always doing happy dances. And so stay engaged in the presentation, in the session, and definitely share with us as you're taking this all in. So today's session is titled Latinx Teachers in Search of Belonging in Schools. And the reason for this title is both personal and professional. And I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about it because the story unfolds as we tell this story. And so, but before we start, I want you either in the chat or maybe Delia will do a poll. How do you identify? And do you ever wonder why? Do you identify as Mexican? I talk to lots of high school students that say, oiga, maestra, yo todavía soy mexicano, yo todavía soy guatemalteco, And so Mexican American, Chicano, Chicana, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, I used Hispanic twice, maybe because it comes up so much in the literature, and then Latinx. So just a real quick, how do you identify, and have you ever wondered why? Tenemos así como 30 segundos, so 30 seconds to get it done. So please just share, and then let's have just a quick conversation about that.
Can you please mention the last ones after Latino real quick? I'm going to create that poll for you.
Oh, you're going to create
So it's Mexican, Mexican-American, Chicano.
Te los voy a enseñar because oh, there you go.
All right, Hispanic and Latinx. Okay. All right, the poll is coming, y'all.
I love that somebody said dependent on context. That's so powerful because as we are in search of belonging in different public and private spaces, we identify. Mi papá decía, I won't say the first words, chinga tu eres mexicana. Don't you ever forget that. Lo americano nada más porque trajimos aquí. And so he would always say, and the word Hispanic had no meaning to him. And so I think in my immediate space, my immediate story, my parents really wanted us to never forget que primero eran los mexicanos and that we had those values and we had those traditions and we had that language. When my mom passed, I think one of the saddest moments when she said, mija, no hice lo que debía de ser, because she had so many children who had been robbed of their native language. They didn't speak that Spanish. And so, yep, I love this. Yep, Mexican to some and Hispanic to others. And I know that I think La Tanya is on. She's pura Chicana from northern New Mexico, one of those fighters who go out there and advocate and push. And so because Chicana politically has that soy una chingona. I'm just, I'm a with it person, and not that the rest of us are not. So what are you finding from the poll there, Delia? Hello, are you guys out there?
I'm finding the majority are identifying as Latino or Latina, but the chat is awesome. I see a Puerto Rican here. I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
I'm half, so I'm Mexican and Puerto Rican. Although Audrey Lord says never say half of half, just say you're full. So I'm 100% Latina, right? And I identify as a Latina. But yeah, Mexican, American, Chicano, Hispana in the United States, and Mexico. In Mexico, she says Mexicana. That's awesome.
So we're going to move on because I want you to remember, the title of this is In Search of Belonging. And oftentimes we are placed in a box with one label, and yet when we identify and we use this terminology, it always comes from a deeply rooted cultural, experiential, historical point. And it's powerful in the way that we move forward in the spaces that we do. And we could spend the whole 45 minutes just talking about that. But I always want you to remember why it is that we identify with, under a certain name, how we name ourselves. So what are we going to do in this session? We're going to identify the ways that our biopsychosocial realities drive our actions, thoughts, and processes. And we're going to map out the intersectionality of biography and professionalism within the structures and variables of our society, community, schools, and classrooms. Because we are oftentimes find ourselves in our spaces where that's standing our power becomes very, very difficult. And you're going to hear from voices of teachers that I've worked with over the course of 20 years. I have spent a lifetime, and I'm not exaggerating, a lifetime trying to answer the question of how I do identify, and when do I identify, and what actions am I able to take care of right now or engage in, and which ones am I? When do I silence my voice, and when do I put it out? And it is exhausting. There is fatigue in that. So I'm going to just share a very quick, just kind of bathing for you of my own language. So I'm a first-generation language learner who came into the United States into a predominantly white space in eastern New Mexico. I came as an elementary school, as a fifth grader, and I quickly engaged in trying to survive. I love that Jose said, when he went into high school, he quickly realized he had to survive. And I think for many Latinx, young Mexican-American, Salvadorian, Guatemaltecos, we come into a space and oftentimes we don't figure out how we can come up for air. And that's where we lose so many students. That's where our retention at the high school level. For me, I quickly learned it was about persistence. It was about being and behaving like them. That when I went home with my mother who didn't speak English, who had a third grade education, who went out to the fields and came back and washed her clothes in the bathtub, that was one place. But the other place was in a context where people had washer and dryers and they had 5 bedrooms. And so, but at certain points during that trajectory of becoming, I kept thinking my family maybe was dysfunctional. Maybe this isn't the way families were supposed to be. And so by the grace of God and some really wonderful a wonderful village of teachers and paraprofessionals and people who knew me, I made it into that, Eastern New Mexico University, where I had the greatest mentor of my life, Julia Rosa Lopez Inslee. But there I had the questions of who belongs here. Maybe my grammar's not good enough to be part of this. Maybe, do I have what it takes? Because there was no place for me to go because no one had gone before me. I graduated as a teacher and I went into the public schools, again, the only Latina amongst predominantly white teachers who had grown up in the same space that I had grown up. And I went in, ready to take on the world because, of course, como Mexicanos, como Latinos, como Hispanos, we have it, man. Our kids are brilliant. They're gifted. They're emergent bilinguals. And pretty soon I came into the lounge and I went into professional developments and I was like, man, Socorro, you are really messed up. You are full of bullshit. This is not reality. This is an idealism. Look at the tests. Look, these people have been teaching for a long time. These are counselors. These are principals. These are people who have a whole lot more than you do. And I had this internal conflict that I had this different point of view and where did I fit in? I was trying to swim. I was trying to make it through. And I sat on so many meetings for special education that I thought, I need to learn more. I need to go get a counseling degree because yo no sé nada. Esta gente, I say something and me ven como que estoy loca. So maybe I'm wrong. And then in my counseling, we had the DSM-4 and I was like, oh, Dios mío, we're all pathological. I guess if you're poor and if your culture is different and if your language is different, we're just a bunch of dysfunctional. I'm not joking that I took the DSM-4 and I put little pieces of paper on all the pages that said, your mother's an enabler, your dad's an alcoholic. I went through all of these things and I'm like, Diosito querido, I don't know if I'm ever going to be fixed. But I still persisted and I went back to the counseling space. I lasted a very short time because all I was doing was talking to parents about the test scores and their kids and how they couldn't be fixed and the behavior. And I thought I can't do this anymore. So I ended up at Texas Tech University working with educators for drug-free schools. And that opened up my eyes even more. I had the opportunity to work in a prison and in Texas, and I would go in and I was surrounded by a sea of Black and brown children. And I would go in there to work on professional development with teachers and to do some demonstration lessons. And the kids were brilliant. And what cracked for me there was that the kids always talked about school and how school had not understood them and how teachers had labeled them and how teachers had never seen their potential. They never talked about the dysfunction of their family, or they saw themselves as these young men who had this incredible potential, but the light had been put out, and that light had been put out in schools. And so they would say, my teachers hated me. No one believed that I could learn. And so then the question went into damn it, no, you've got to somehow push this narrative, Socorro. You've got to push this narrative that no, we're not dysfunctional, we're not broken, and that we belong, and that we have a voice, and that our culture and our language is beautiful. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go do a PhD, damn it, porque no one's listening to me. And I, at that point, I was in Lubbock, Texas, so West Texas. So the number of, you really couldn't network very much. There were not a whole lot of people, and I was not knowledgeable about that there's a whole world out there, and technology isn't where it is today. So I went to get a PhD, but I thought, not going to do a curriculum instruction PhD. I want to know through a psychology perspective what it is, not the attitudes and beliefs, but the deeply embedded assumptions that teachers hold in relation to their Mexican-American students. And I found out that they thought that all of them, had, first, I don't see color, so get out of my face. And second, I don't have to accommodate because these students are so broken that, I'm not going to be able. And these students, I can't hold high expectations because they're not capable. So they had this reductionistic prescriptivism, like we've got to do the interventions, we've got to do the Durham practice, they're missing. I love that they had the mañana attitude. All they care about is piñatas, and they go on the weekend and they dance and they sing, and then the scapegoating was there. I spent 1.5 years in that school, and what I find today in many schools across the state and across the country, that this is still very much the narrative. This is very much the narrative. I love that Jose talked about the testing. If I could dismantle one thing in the world, it would be how it is that our students are described as far as testing. And now I've talked way too much. What's going through your head? What's a question that you have? What's a thought that you have? And we're not going to spend but maybe 30 seconds, but I just vomited, who it is that I am and why it is that I do the work that I do. But I'm wondering, what are you thinking out there? So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to enter into conversation with you and with Delia for a minute.
Adriana Puentes Gonzalez says, I was talking with teachers, and I said, I don't know why some parents are not teaching Spanish to their kids. And someone said maybe because they think Spanish is not the language of power. I do not agree.
Well, and remember, I want you to think for a minute that we get a lot of oppressive language. With with preschool students. The one thing that I fight the most with children, it's a challenge. It's talking to parents about the need for bilingualism and to the power of our language and all of this. But the oppressive language and the message that comes from school is get them into English as quickly as possible if you want them to be career and college ready. Because every day that you spend speaking to your children in Spanish, so there's a myth and a misconception with teachers, with politicians, and that gets translated to the parents. Y nosotros somos como padres de familia. We think the teacher holds the answers. I sat in a meeting very recently with someone who didn't need to be in the ESL program because she's brilliant, with a mother, and I was sitting with a committee. I have a doctorate. And I know this mother and I know this child. And the mother turned to me and said, ay, señora, todos los maestros piensan diferente que usted. ¿Por qué usted piensa que ella puede salir adelante en las clases? And I said, porque lo sé. Le dije, el examen no está enseñando lo que su hija, el conocimiento de su hija. And so it was this, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm all the way back in Portales, New Mexico, sitting on a special ed committee with 5 people looking at me, and I'm being this voice that's contradicting this. And so, at the end, she goes, pues señora, usted dígales lo que quiera. But you could see that a mother who is a friend, who is a community member, she really was having doubts about what I was saying because there were so many papers in front of all the others and they all had a united voice. And so that happens. So with our preschoolers, with our kindergartners, there are many teachers who say, don't speak to your child in Spanish. They'll never learn English. They'll never learn to read. They'll never be successful. Y si yo no tengo conocimiento, I'm going to say, pues la maestra es la que sabe. So that's all the dismantling that we still have to do. I mean, there's quite a bit. And so
Can you take one more? There's one
Yes, I can. Oh my gosh, I wish we were going to spend longer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that can definitely use your input. So Kendra Wilt says, we have a different issue now. The Latino community is so tight. They speak only Spanish at home, and it's hard to teach them English. The process to learning English is slow. We encourage them to keep their Spanish at a high level, but they are not motivated to learn English. How can we work with this in a positive way?
Well, in a positive way is to get those dual language, those bilingual programs in your school. And if that can't happen, it's to, in very structured ways, bring the Spanish language into the classroom. You can bring the Arabic, the German, the Spanish, the English. We just have to provide those canvases of opportunity where kids are able to, in very structured ways, and we in very strategic ways, utilize that native language. And of course, beginning to have the parental engagement look different, moving beyond the PTAs or parents coming to a program. And so we, like I said, that's a whole nother session, but that's what we have. It's now not we should or we could, it's we must. If we do not dismantle the narratives, because what you just asked needs to come into the school. Yeah, let the parents speak only in Spanish and do the music in Spanish and the literacy in Spanish. Now you take that power that's happening there and bring it into the school. But in order to do that, we're going to have to rethink, dismantle, explore the curriculum. I'm not saying throw the curriculum out. I'm not saying throw the standards out. I'm not saying throw the objectives, but be able to balance between the stories, the narratives, the literacy of the home, and the literacy and curriculum prescription that we have in the school. So we got to go. Yes, Sabina, you know how crazy I am, and I'm becoming crazier as the time goes on. Ya me voy a hacer viejita, and then I'm going to go out there and scream because I don't want to leave this world and still be having the same conversations I had way back when. But we're going to continue because I really want you to see some video here in a minute. And so much to be discussed. External narratives, the narratives of the teacher, the narratives of the classroom, and I'm talking my peers, the narrative of the culture of the school, the narrative of the community, the narrative of the region, the narrative of the state, the narrative of the nation, really impacts my biological self, my mental health, even my physical self. It impacts my psychological dimension. You saw, I spent my whole life, and still on some days, sitting in meetings, I'm like, as my dad would say, and I know this is a horrible word, pendeja, no sabes nada, agacha la cabeza and do what these white people want you to do because ellos son los que tienen el poder. That was my dad's narrative to me. So all these narratives, that psychological dimension that we have to push back against. And then society, I love that Jose is doing sociology and education. We need so much more than that. But when we look at the linguistic, the sociocultural, the cognitive, and the academic, we have these external narratives that are imposed on us, and we begin to have those identities. Like I said, Jose, thank you for saying that in high school to survive, you shifted, because many of our teachers across the country who are Latinas, Latinos, Latinx, they take the narrative of the school, and in order to survive, because they are the only Latinx teacher in that space, they must be able to do that. So remember that our socialization and our racial identification are so pushed. We come into every space with that primary socialization from the home, because somos chingones y chingonas. We can take on the world, damn it. You just watch a preschooler or a kindergartner arrive in school, and then you ask that same child in 5th or 6th grade if they speak Spanish, and they hide their, and they go like, no, señora, no me pregunte eso. I don't speak Spanish. I don't have anything to do with these people. I've done this over and over and over the last 40 years that I've been in education, because that secondary and tertiary socialization that we get says, we don't see color, and neither should you. And no, we have one united story, and it's the story of the narrative I'm providing for you. And don't bring other narratives, because that imbalances us. And so again, I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but this is where for us as teachers, for us as educators, for us as parents, whatever your professional space is right now, ask yourself, how was I prepared to become a teacher? Did anyone teach me to dismantle? Did anyone prepare me to really ground myself in being this teacher in my culture and in my language, in my with-itness, in what it is that I have? Because I think for most of us, the answer would be no. For our Besito students that you're going to see here in a minute, their narrative of how they've lost and used their voices within schools, you'll understand that their program was a little bit different. But most of the time, colleges of education prepare the teacher to teach curriculum and to love all their kids and to be culturally responsive without talking about how and who are you and what is your identity and how do you represent yourself and how do you position yourself as a teacher. Because once you get into that all white space, or you get into that space that has people like you, your positioning as a teacher and your voice will either be amplified or it will be inhibited. And so we spend the rest of our life becoming the teacher we want to be in a very political space. Schools are the microcosms of the politics of our country. And so in that becoming, our journey from preparing to becoming, that agency and that with-itness and that dismantling narratives becomes an overwhelming, I can't breathe. So if this was your pedagogical map, what pathways and engagements brought you to where you are today? What voices did you hear? What voices do you continue to hear? And so that is my question for you. And I'm going to take like 30 seconds and go back. And then after this, I'm not going to stop because there's 2 videos that I really, really want you to watch before the session is over and we're done at 10:45. But I think what voices did you hear are very important as you were preparing, as you were positioning, and then what voices are you hearing now as you continue to become the teacher you want to be? Because we never stop becoming. I've been in education for 40 years, and every single day I'm positioning and becoming, positioning and becoming. So I'm going to be quiet. Cállate ya, Socorro. You're going too fast. And so anyway, I'm going to stop sharing. That's the question. Tara, good for you. Mwah. I'm so happy. That makes a whole different, being taught our history, the work of our ancestors as a tool to dismantle. Every child should have that. Teaching is very political. Teaching is political, and finding that space where we fit in, and we have to prepare teachers to be political. How do we go about doing that? Dr. Pacina, I love that. We need the relational trust at all levels. Yeah, we need to build those relationships, and you're going to see all students benefit from having teachers of color. I would love to have a conversation with you on that. So email me, because I'd actually like to pick up the phone and have a conversation. Yes, Latanya also attended a Hispanic serving institution, and that makes all the difference in the world. And Sabina says, as you position yourself as a teacher and you continue to move up, the leadership becomes even harder, but you can't do it. Yes, Sabina, aquí estamos todavía. But, we haven't been dismantled personally. And Dr. Bettina Love says school's main purpose should be to identity work. Absolutely, absolutely, Annabelle. But what's really important is this happening? We know the what and the why. What I have to ask is it happening? And so with that, I'm going to share screen, because I want to share with you this research that we've done with 100 plus teachers here in the state of Kansas that are teachers. So the why of our positionality, we all know that the numbers continue to grow, but the last one is the one that is key. The trauma of exclusion, assimilation, colonization, racism, and lowered expectations affects communities and families for generations. So go back to my study that was, 25 years ago, almost 28 years ago, that the voices of those teachers are ever present in schools today. I'm in schools at least 2 or 3 times a week. Sabina knows that. And so oftentimes that intentionality of our actions, both as a teacher as well as a leader, are based on we retreat, or we engage based on the realities of what's happening socially and in how we're taking it in sociologically. I want you to watch this video. This is a group of teachers that went through Kansas State University 20 years ago. Of the 100 plus teachers who are out now, all of them are still in education. And we just finished a study that you're going to hear their words in a minute. So when this group of students were about to graduate from Kansas State University, I said to them, what would you like to say to every teacher you've ever had, including your university professors? I want you to go through all the identity papers that you have written, and I'm going to bring someone in to work on a monologue. This is one of 6 monologues that came together. But what would you want every single teacher to know? This was 20 years ago. I want you to listen to their voices and see what it is that you hear. So take it away, Delia.
Thanks. I was about to ask you to let me share. All right.
Judge me by my skin.
Judge me by my language. Judge me by my test scores. Judge me. Look at me and see me. Who do you think I am? Don't judge me by my.
Don't judge me by my.
Don't judge me by my.
Don't judge me.
Look at me and see me. I am who I am. I am a woman. I am strong. I speak Spanish, but that does not necessarily mean I'm from Mexico. I could be from anywhere, or I could have learned it here. Don't assume that all of us have gone through the same, that we go to the same, that we have the same and like the same. Just because I don't speak your language doesn't mean I'm different. Just because I do speak your language doesn't mean I'm the same. Judge me by my skin. Don't.
Judge me by my language.
Don't judge me by my test scores.
Don't judge me.
Judge me not. Do you know who I am? Don't judge me by my test scores.
When I was in 6th grade, my school was tested.
I did not score well on this one test. I was placed in lower math, lower science, lower social studies, and lower language arts. I lacked self-esteem in the classroom because of this one test in the 6th grade.
Don't judge me by my skin. Don't judge me by my language.
Don't judge me by my test scores.
Don't judge me.
I know who I am. Don't judge me. Get to know you first by knowing where you fit in the world. Maybe you can get to know where I fit.
Take a minute to talk to me.
And learn who I really am. It would mean a lot to me. I'm quite different than most.
Get to know me and you will see that I'm not that different at all.
My skin, my language, my test scores. We know who we are, and it's not that. We know who we are. Do you?
So I'm hoping, oops, there we go. I'm going to continue with the session only because we don't have a lot of time and I want you to hear the voices of these students. So there's a recent study and I'll be glad to send out the chapter that these themes come from. And so we have been following many of the teachers who were in the Besitos program for the course of over 15 years about their experience in schools. And so the trajectory of the our invisibility as teachers, these words come from teachers who are teaching in the greater Kansas City area, in southwestern Kansas, and a few in Wichita. But I want you to listen to how it is that they have been accepted. I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. If you'd like the chapter, I'd be glad to share it with you. Also, Kansas State University in April will be holding a Teachers of Color conference. And so this is part of a documentary that's going to come out. So the teachers, all of them, not whether they were right at the beginning of their program or where they are right now, they saw themselves and were gifted, qualified, and capable. But as they went into the schools, the actions of other teachers, of leadership, was that of becoming invisible. And so they've spent their life in the public schools for the last 15 to 20 years as teachers, looking for ways to push back and not being able to find that support system to be able to do it. So I'm going to read this in English only because I'm in a hurry and I don't know if everyone that's watching is bilingual. So this teacher said, I think that I feel less than, but I don't show it. I always think when I go to meetings, okay, I was going to a meeting and that made me, and I said to the white teacher, what am I going to do there? And truthfully, that other blonde teacher said, oh, you're the Mexican token. These are words that happen in schools where oftentimes many of the teachers do a phenomenal, they're political in their classroom, they're political in their community, but they're not political in their school because of the messages that are received in meetings as they sit in special ed, sit team meetings. And so oftentimes others see them, if you're at this meeting, you are not to speak because you are the token. You are a racialized token, and that's what you're here. And so there's not a critical mass of Latinx individuals in the teachers, despite the population that we have. And so it's very difficult to stand and find that power or stand your power when you're one of 167 in a high school. Yeah, because this comes from a high school teacher. Self-doubt versus self-confident. If I could mirror what these teachers are feeling, it's that feeling of, do I really fit here? What will they think? What will my evaluation be like? Can I truly be myself? Because most of our Besitos teachers find themselves in predominantly white spaces with white leaders. And it's not until they remove themselves and the individual the matriarch I called in my study, who pushes against that person until they're removed from that space, it's like I can breathe. So think about that as teachers, we have a profound impact in sending those messages that are external. So the minimization of others, slowly I started hearing comments that caught my attention, like was when I was part of a project with my colleagues, they'd always want me to be the one that did the PowerPoint, to run the clicker. They never gave me the job that I wanted during group projects or presentations. They talked over me, and that's when I began to realize I wasn't as valued as they were. And then many of our teachers strategically chose that invisibility because they thought, I'm here to serve the community, my families, and my students. And so I will just hand the clicker over. I will give them my words because when it comes from a white teacher, the other white teachers listen. When it comes from me, I have a chip on my shoulder. So we had a lot of that. In the urban districts, there was a lot of waste of human talent. They talked about, I have so much to say. I can build relationships. I know what to do, but nobody ever asked. In rural districts, I can't talk with people because the curriculum always pushes back. They look at me like I'm crazy. And so, like I said, so a lot of the teachers have the power. Going back to Jose, stand your power. And the administrators listened to them to take students out of classes. They need to be ready for college, and those that were in conversations felt really strong about it. I would just talk to instructors and say, if they're in one of your classes, it was because they needed that class. And if they need help, I will help, but that student needs to stay in your class. And so it's not to say that taking the stance for students and advocating despite all the personal loss that they were getting, but I want to tell you that in doing many, many interviews for many, many hours, it's a constant push, and it happens in the greater Kansas City area. It happens in Wichita. It happens in Emporia. It happens in across the state, because there's so few of our teachers. So one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, how will we address this? And I'm going to go because I want you to watch the last video. So I want you to go into the future thinking, what informs our educational practices? Where do our mindsets come from? And do we take time to respond to where do our shifting identities in classroom, schools, and larger communities fit in, given that those messages that we're getting? And do we examine our prior experiences and socializations in ways that can impact our educational practices? I'm going to go past this. Where do we go from here? I want you to listen to Jorge. And I especially want you to hear the very last line or the very last 20 seconds in this video, because it speaks volumes. And we need to figure out, all of us that are in this session, we need to figure out how to dismantle the oppressive white spaces that our teachers find themselves in so that they can stand their power. Okay, go ahead.
Just so you know, Dr. Herrera, time is up. And there have been people that have moved on. I think this is the Cafecito time. Susana, if you could comment in here, do you think we can just play this, the last 30 minutes, and then those who are here, she might have left. I'm going to go ahead and make that executive decision, and then you and I got to go into that other session.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we do.
So 20
sorry.
seconds?
I knew I was going to run out of time. A lot of, lots of stuff. Okay. Let's go.
All right. So 20 seconds. So I'll fast forward. Let's see how I can do this. Okay, there we go.
And so he appreciates that symbol in a way that reminds him every day why he does the work that he does.
Well, and this will be available later.
Yeah.
Tired from the
All right.
beef patty.
Yeah,
He gave him the ring as a symbol of how proud he was.
Yeah, let's go ahead and wait
For his
on the
children.
video. So I'd like to I know it's time to go.
Okay.
This will be something that we can do later. Just a final thought from each of you. I'm sorry we didn't finish, but I think you get the point that I was trying to make through all of this. So just a final thought, and let's go to the cafecito because it's going to be music, I think. And so we definitely want to go there.
Yes. Thank you all for being here.
I think most people got kicked off at the 1 minute.
I think so. Yeah, because we went from 85 to 13 pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here if I know how to do this. And then
Okay, I'll see you in the next one. What time does the next one start, Mujer?
11:05. I'll jump in there about 11.
Okay.
Okay.